So let's call the meeting to order. Carol, are we recording?
Yes.
All right. I'm Marcos Vigil, Deputy Secretary of State for Business and Licensing and Consumer Protection. Thank you, everyone, for coming to this board meeting. We have had a very active year so far, and I know that all of our subcommittees have been very busy driving through the agendas that we've discussed in the past. Let's just go around the table to make sure that we have the roll call of who's present here in Albany. Here in New York City, as I said, Marcos Vigil, representing the Secretary of State, who chairs the board.
Eileen Spinola.
Diane Ramirez.
Dan Burstein. I'm Executive Deputy Superintendent with the Department of Financial Services, representing the Superintendent.
Sandra Erickson.
Trisha O'Connor-Francis.
Buffalo?
Just David Dworkin.
Aw, never just.
All right, Albany?
Duncan McKenzie. Just me.
All right, can we have the representatives from the department also introduce themselves?
Yeah. Kathy McCoy.
Mike Elmendorf.
Whitney Clark. Linda Cleary.
Donna Zoller.
Mark Mastrobuono.
Amy Pensby.
Carol Fansler. Mary Jo Moore.
Akil Qureshi.
All right. Before we move to the first item on our agenda, I also wanted to give everyone an update with respect to personnel changes at the department. Mike Elmendorf is now our Assistant Director of Licensing Services, and we wanted to thank him for all the time and the excellent work that he did as our Chief Investigator, and also want to congratulate Mike on his new position and the new responsibilities that he's taking over for the department. So thank you, Mike. I don't know if you have a few words to share with the group.
Don't get it started.
Just my enforcement report, which is brief.
All right, so we'll wait when we call you up for that. Of course, that means that we have an open position for Chief Enforcement Officer, and right now we have concluded our interviews for that, and we'll be making a decision soon, and we'll be introducing the new Chief Enforcement Officer at our next board meeting. Since we don't have quorum, we're just shy of quorum, we're going to skip the approval of the April 24th draft summary because we don't have the votes to do that. So let's move to the next item, which are the departmental updates. Kathy McCoy.
Okay. I've got some statistics. There are currently 111,700 real estate licensees licensed in New York State. That is about a 3% increase from this time last year. There are 52,868 brokers and 58,834 salespeople.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the broker number?
58, no, I apologize. Brokers 52,868 and sales are 58,834.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What we've seen when comparing the first and second quarter of 2013 to the first and second quarter of 2012 is a 22% increase in original licenses issued and an 11% decrease in renewal licenses issued. In the months of July, comparing July 2013 to July 2012, we've seen 10% increase in the number of sales licensees and an 11% decrease in the number of broker licensees. That is specific to July.
Decrease first.
Mary Jo, do you have the percentage or just general breakdown of how this looks throughout the state, either by counties or regions, downstate, Long Island, New York City?
in our folders, there are statistics. Broker and sales statistics, and these are by county. These are as of August 3rd, no? Oh, these are from 12.
Now, these individuals, I mean, some people can hold multiple licenses, so this,
That's each license.
so it could.
So it could be the same person counted multiple times, correct?
Do you have a way to filter that out for just individual people?
No.
No.
Not at this
So we don't really know how many people are practicing different licenses.
Correct.
Yeah, and you really don't know how many people are practicing either. They just might renew their license and not really be practicing.
So the statistics that we have here are 2012 statistics. We can email you all the current statistics for this 2013. Or it's all relative.
Okay. If you can, when you email the statistics, if you can include a comparison on whether there's an increase, it doesn't have to necessarily be by county. You can use the regional economic council's breakdown to show whether there's an increase or decrease by state region. That would be helpful.
From 2012 to 2013?
Correct.
Okay.
I know someone just queried about if you had certain statistics. I was wondering if it is possible, because it is kind of, I think, interesting to know whether someone is practicing, not practicing. If on the renewal, if we could ask people what their primary area of practice is, do they do residential sales, commercial sales? Do they do property management? Do they do, are they active, or are they just renewing their license? It would seem to me that since we have electronic renewal, these are all different questions that could be asked, and statistics that could be very valuable if coded in a certain way. I'm not saying do it now. I'm just saying I think it is something for the Department of State to recognize they have the ability to do, since licensees are required to give you information every 2 years.
Right, and I think that, I think that one of the things that we can do, to the extent that there are limitations in the system that we currently have, as you all know, because we're making improvements across the discipline for licensing, that's definitely a field that we should consider asking the vendor to include, so that, one of the things that we can ask both brokers and salespeople is to add that information, and whenever either one of you has a query or we are doing our own reviews or studies, we can just provide that information as a general report. So I think that that's a great idea.
Well, not only provide it as in a general report, but there are times, I don't know how frequently, there is information that you want to reach out to a certain segment of your population, and then you would be able to identify them very readily and target your email or mailings or whatever to those individuals.
Right. Amy, is that something that can be considered?
Yeah, as we move forward with the e-licensing project, that's definitely something that I'll reach out to the board members at the time that we're defining requirements as to what kind of information you would want to track. And then we'd have to come up with a statistical report for that kind of information.
All right, thank you. Any additional updates from the department before we move into the enforcement report?
No.
All right.
Excuse me, I do have one item that I wanted to bring up. The Bureau of Educational Standards has increased the number of real estate continuing education audits that we perform. These audits verify that the continuing education was taken within a specified term and that it included the 3 hours of fair housing. In addition to increasing the number of audits, we've also taken steps to ensure that our process includes a representative sampling of all counties so that our audits don't appear to be in more in one area than another. And that's something we had to work on to determine how through our process of selecting individuals for audit that we ensure that all counties are taken care of. We don't have statistics right now on the non-compliance compliance rate, but certainly we'll have a report at the next board meeting.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone have any questions? All right, so let's move to the next item on the agenda, enforcement.
As promised, this is going to be brief. In previous board meetings, the departments discussed our shared services concept, where we enter into cooperative enforcement ventures with New York City agencies, other state agencies, and I know that HRA, the Human Rights Administration, had visited this board and discussed an investigation they had that we were cooperating with. And that was a matter of where HRA clients in the city of New York, HRA had entered into a contractual agreement with various real estate brokers to provide housing for their clients, but they would do so at a reduced commission. They would accept 50% of their normal commission, or 50% of the rent. And there were certain real estate brokers that violated that contract. And they were, in essence, taking advantage of the clients. They were holding the keys hostage in many instances, and demanding additional monies off the client outside of that contract with HRA. We completed our investigation. They completed their investigation. The matter was forwarded to the department's Office of General Counsel, and they did a magnificent job. The licensees have surrendered their respective licenses. They've agreed to a suspension of their license, and in many cases, restitution. So the clients have been made whole. We've taken definite action or definitive action and set an example that we will not tolerate such an action from this point forward. So, but we continue to work cooperatively with HRA, and we also work with the Mayor's Office of Special Investigation regarding any matter regarding our licensees, and whether it's real estate or any other area.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mike?
Yeah.
Okay, Trends Committee?
All right, the Trends Committee had a conference call on August 7th, and we reviewed a couple of matters. We gave an update. There's been legislation introduced on the topic we discussed at our last meeting with regard to clarifying the broker rebate, the ability of brokers to provide gifts of some kind to the customers or clients. That legislation was introduced into the legislature, but it was late into the process and was not approved this year. The bills will roll over next year, so it will be live, and there'll continue to be an effort to try and push that along. Also, we had a discussion on the proposal. You remember at our last meeting, the association representing the home inspectors came and brought up the issue of having a new disclosure to consumers about the need for a home inspection. We had a discussion about the need for an added disclosure, and the feeling was that it was really kind of an unnecessary additional piece of paperwork into the process. The property condition disclosure statement says right in its very beginning, its preamble, that it's not a replacement for a qualified home inspection. And there really hasn't been, at least to this point, a demonstration of need for, again, another piece of paper in a process that's already very paper heavy. So I think at this point, there was not a recommendation to go forward. Does that sound right to you, Whitney?
Yes.
On this issue, but I suppose it's always out there for further discussion. There were two other issues. I'm going to turn them over to Whitney to discuss.
Okay, thank you, Duncan. The first issue, at previous board meetings, we've discussed creating an inactive status. Our current system, if you go online, it only shows licensees who are associated with a brokerage and have an active license. It doesn't show salespeople or associate brokers who are eligible for employment but just not associated with a broker. So we met to discuss a possible legislative change. We did find some examples from other states. It appears as though a fair number of them do permit licensees to go into an inactive status. But we ran into a practical problem. As we've mentioned, we're in the midst of a statewide initiative to upgrade all of our licensing databases. The real estate portion of that is a four-year or three-year plan? Three-year initiative. We are currently in year one. Real estate isn't scheduled to go live for another 2 years. So any legislative change would have to wait until then. So what we're doing in the interim, we're consulting with our IT department to see what modifications we can make to the current system to show the canceled licensees who are eligible for employment. So we've made a request, and we should be hearing back, hopefully by the next board meeting. We'll be able to give you a report on the status of that. Any questions on that issue before I move into another topic? Okay. The second issue that we discussed was an issue of local laws that we discussed at our last board meeting. There were two. There's the HRA issue, and there was not necessarily a law, it's more of a policy statement from Nassau County Department of Social Services. I'll speak to that issue first before turning it over to Sandra on the HRA issue. The Nassau County Department of Social Services has issued a bulletin to brokers who are working with their clients in transactions. And it's problematic in certain areas. It appears to require brokers to explain lease provisions to ensure that the property is code compliant. So I had written a letter to Kathy Nolan from the Long Island Board of Realtors outlining my concerns about the policy statement. I don't know if she has heard back. What I propose to do on this issue is to treat it similarly to what we did with HRA to try to establish some kind of dialogue with Nassau County, to have them come into the board to explain the policy so that we can ask questions, get clarification, and hopefully resolve the pending issues. So I'll try to set that up hopefully for the next board meeting. And Sandra, I'm going to turn it over to you on the HRA issue.
Sure. I just wanted to mention that, as you know, in New York City we have the lawful source of income law, so we would have to, or we would take anyone who comes into the office that qualifies for the apartment. And brokers, I've seen the contract that they have to accept a half a month's rent. And while some of the brokers grumble about it, the owner is permitted to pay the other half. It's the tenant who can't pay it. So HRA appears to be fine with that, and it would be, up to either the landlord has to pay it or the broker has to accept half a month's rent. So it seems that the brokers that are dealing with HRA clients have basically accepted it just from my own experience, and it seems to work. But it just the broker, I guess, can go ahead and get a client that's getting the rent and security and broker's fee from HRA, and I don't know if they may be permitted to work with that client or not, but the owner would have to, if it's presented, would have to accept that person if they do qualify for the apartment. So this seems to be working from other owners and brokers I'm speaking with, so I just wanted to mention that.
All right, does anyone have any questions? All right, so education?
Yes, education. Well, I want to thank Mark and Amy and the Education Committee for their dedication. We've met several times, even over the summer, and it's a work in progress. of course, we're keeping within the 45 hours, so there's no need for a legislative change, but it requires going over topic by topic in the broker syllabus and the learning objectives. So each item, on some of them where, like say, construction and development, we're seeing where there's areas that we can reduce the hours, and our main goal, according to our survey and just what we feel the industry needs, is to add to the 5 hours that's currently in brokers' office operation, management, and supervision. We'd like to see maybe even as many as 10 hours added to that, for maybe a total of between 13 and 15 hours. We feel this will be really an unbelievable boost to our brokers class, so the broker can then have some real practical knowledge as far as opening up their own office. And we will continue to meet. We're meeting, we hope to have something by the end of the year, but again, it's each topic, how many minutes each topic will have within that particular subject. So it's a long process. We're tackling between 1 and 2 topics at each meeting because it is very involved, but we feel it's going to be a really big improvement to our brokers course. Anyone have any questions?
I do. I think, Mr. Marcos, I had spoken to you about this before. I think 2 things that probably should be added is recently I went to an open house, and the associate broker was not there, and 2 assistants were doing the open house. And I had spoken to the associate broker before, and I was the first one that showed up at the open house. She was not there. The 2 assistants were there showing the open house, answering questions, which I know are things that someone who is not licensed would not know the answers to this. There were other customers walking into the open house getting these answers from them. I was there representing my clients, so at least they didn't have to rely on their information. When I called her to tell her that she cannot do that, she didn't even know. It's like she didn't even know that she wasn't supposed to have unlicensed. And when I told the unlicensed persons that they're not supposed to be doing this, and when I kind of asked around and was talking to people said, oh yes, they will get paid a commission once the property is sold, which is clearly a kickback.
Oh, wow.
So, and this is a big name real estate company that was doing this. So I think maybe the brokers of the office need to have the assistants registered with I hate to micromanage with the brokers, but maybe the broker doesn't even know that they have these assistants who are unlicensed doing the extent of this work. The next issue I have,
Wait, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
You were saying you want this added?
No, I'm not.
Okay, because it is presently in the curriculum, and there's quite a definitive list in the curriculum as to what duties assistants can and cannot perform. So it is already in the curriculum.
But what we might be able to do, is to, in this expanded brokers supervision and operation, we can certainly highlight that.
Emphasize that.
That's what we're trying to do away with things that are not as, we're trying to get more practical information in there, and that's a perfect example we can make sure we look into when we're...
Because what I'm just saying, the broker may not even be aware that maybe they know that they have assistants, but don't know that they have assistants doing this open house because she has to take her kids to the ball game or something like that. The next issue I have is one of my agents was working on a deal, and the deal wasn't going to right. So I called for the broker. The broker's out of the country, right? I travel out myself, but you can still get in contact with me. He won't be back. I asked for his cell phone number. I asked for email address. Nothing. 2 weeks later, I call back again. He's still out of the country. I can't find him. When I finally asked to speak to the manager, it was a woman who I'm assuming was his daughter. I was on my computer and I looked up her name in eAccess. She's a salesperson. And I said to her, "What is your title?" She said, "Oh, I manage this office." I said, "Well, what are you?" She says, "I'm a broker." I said, "Are you sure you're a broker?" "Yes, I'm a broker." I said, "Well, eAccess says you're a salesperson." She says, "Well, I'm the one running the office." I said, "Well, can you tell me where the broker is?" "Oh, he's out of the country." My assumption, this may be far, maybe he passed away and they just continued running the whole system, but he's fictitious. He's not there anymore. So maybe it may sound crazy, but there has to be some type of system that if someone does pass away or something happened, the broker, it has to be reported. Like, do people not understand that you can't run the office if you're a salesperson because you don't understand? And the deal was the lawyers
Legally,
were.
you can't. Legally, you cannot.
You cannot.
So shouldn't that just be reported to?
Yeah, I mean-
Yeah, that should be reported.
Well, I
One of the things
reported
that-
both
yeah,
of them.
Oh,
I reported both of them.
We discussed that. Whenever any board member or obviously any member of the public runs into situations like that, they should definitely report it to us.
Which
It means that we do open an investigation. Doesn't mean necessarily it all ends up in a suspension or the license being revoked, but it at least brings the matter to our attention, and we can address that issue.
So these are just things that
No,
need to
we're
be
gonna really,
addressed in those issues. So
If I could just ask one question, Sandra, you had said something that it sounded like you said 45 hours and that we don't need to change the legislation. What 45 hours are you referring to?
The broker's course.
Okay, the
Say
course
we
itself.
decided we want to expand broker's office operation and we need another 5 hours to 50. We cannot do that. We have to work within the 45 hours, which we have an outline and it will work. We have a great outline. Mark has been fantastic. We've just been able to, again, take a little bit, like an hour out of several topics, and we're going to put all of that really into this broker's office operation and management and supervision. So we can stay, right, Whitney? As long as we stay or Mark within the 45 hours, we can move topics around, and and then vote on it, and that's fine. Is that how I understand it, Mark?
Yes,
Yes.
that's my understanding as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the process, what we're doing is looking at the curriculum, taking certain subjects, looking for subtopics that are redundant, and adjusting them, combining some of the topics so that we're creating space to add additional subject matter to office operation, as Sandra said. And this is based on the survey that we did among all of the real estate schools. It's a long process. We're currently creating the space for additional subject matter. So it's the process is to go through, find the space where we need it. Once we've determined where the existing information that's going to stay in the curriculum will be within that order, then we can start working on the new subject matter and adjusting the learning objectives to go along with that new subject matter while maintaining the existing learning objectives that go with the current material. So doing this through telephone conferences, because of the level of detail and the importance of the information, it's a long process. But as Sandra said, things are going well, and we do expect to have a very good, useful product for the industry once this is completed.
Is there, Sandra, is there someone on your committee who does commercial?
I don't believe so. No, there is not. I mean, I do property management and investment properties. That would be the closest.
I do some, not much.
If you have a particular concern about topics to be covered, please send them over to me, and we'll.
I think you bring up the issue of commercial, and I think I know why. That's because in the previous, before we got up to the new 75-hour requirement in 2008, the previous 45-hour course really had very little commercial practical information in it. it was very much geared towards going into the residential field. With the revisions of 2008, they brought in 30 hours of new material to the salesperson's course. A good portion of that was dedicated to expose the student to the commercial arena of real estate. This way, the newbie had a flavor of the different disciplines they could enter in real estate. And of all the disciplines they could choose to enter, the commercial arena was the least, least presented. And so the 30 hours was brought into the 75-hour class. And those that are going presently for broker courses that were not exposed to that have to take that 30 hours in a separate course before they can presently get a broker's license.
Remedial.
So I know what you might be referring to because you might have gotten your license previous to 2008, but now there is a very hefty segment of commercial real estate in the sales agent's course. And I do assume we will be taking some of that and bringing it into the new time allotments that have been created. In addition to that, however, we are looking at the broker course under Sandra's subcommittee to really focus on someone having to run the office, because that's what the course is geared for. And presently, it does do a disservice to some as to how to run an effective office and to fulfill their obligation under license law to mentor. Well, you can't mentor if you yourself are not aware of the more important items, such as everything under human rights and fair housing. In the present course, that is just touched upon. In the revisions, we hope to have more time dedicated to that. So I hope that answers your question.
It does partially. Actually, I was on the committee back in 2008 when we did it. The main reason I was asking was more so because we're shifting curriculum around. I just wanted to make sure that we had someone that had some commercial background that was part of as that was shifting around. I mean, in 2008 I was thrilled that we added it on the lower levels, but that was kind of why I was asking the question, just to make sure that as we shift, we keep some of that there. But I do agree 100% that the most important thing to be a broker is to know how to run an office.
Yes.
I mean, that's critical.
I do just want to add, we, on the property management section, we consulted with a top person in education at IREM, and they included a segment in there with a lot of commercial non-residential terms in there, so the broker would be able to understand that, and it's pretty specific. I'd like to send it to you if I can, so you can take a look at that.
I'm happy to help, and if anyone ever drops off the committee, I'm happy to be whatever help I can be.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
I'll get your. I have your email address here. I'll get that to you.
That's a paid position, right?
Loving kisses.
Any other questions or comments?
I have, going back to Trends Committee, it's just a clarification. It's Diane Ramirez speaking. Am I on the Trends Committee? I do not believe I got notification of the meeting on August 7th.
I don't think you're on it.
Okay, because I was in the original discussion about inactive status, but maybe it was for,
Yeah, I didn't see you on the.
Okay.
No.
Then maybe I don't have that either.
Diane?
yes, Diane Ramirez. I thought I was on the Trends Committee, but I didn't hear about.
I apologize for that, Diane. You may have been inadvertently dropped. I'll make sure that you're added to future
Okay.
meetings.
Terrific.
Here. See,
Okay.
It's Joe Burko, Sandra, David.
All right,
and
if you
Duncan.
don't need me, that's fine, but I know I was specifically involved in the inactive status when we had that
I think
conversation.
You're on education, though.
So Whitney and Carol, will you take care of making sure that she gets all the information?
Yes.
Terrific.
Thank
It's
you.
a very lively meeting. Very good. My notes.
Right, the next item are the action items, but we don't have the quorum, so we'll skip that and go into new business. Any issues that anyone wants to bring for discussion to the board or to comment?
Is this the time for title? Okay, I just wanted to ask some questions. We got the opinion letter on the corporate sounding titles. That was quite clear. Kind of disappointing in New York because we were all actively incorrectly using them. But going forward, we do have a need, I believe, of acknowledging an agent who has done a tremendous amount of production. And I do feel that the correct license title must be the most prominent. But I was wondering if we could get some guidance as to some sort of acknowledgement for someone that has done a tremendous amount of production, and then the individual companies could certify that they're not getting a title or a designation, let's call it, so we don't confuse it with the title, such as with something like certified consultant or global real estate advisor or director counsel or president chairman counsel, something that could be attached to a certain amount of production. An agent could not get it until they received that, but they would get some internal recognition that the Department of State would not find would be in any way making the public think that they were more attached to the company than such as the managing directors and the vice president titles. I can understand the corporate effect that had, but is there any problem with the companies giving titles like that or designations like that?
Sure. Let me back up just a little bit, Diane. We had a very productive meeting yesterday with REBNY where we discussed some of these issues, and we're going to be issuing an additional opinion letter, hopefully by next week, that addresses some of these issues. I don't want to get into all the details now, but just as an overview, a title can't denote any type of management, supervision, or control in the brokerage. I think a title that recognizes an agent's production that doesn't imply that would be okay. But some of this will be addressed in the opinion letter that we're going to be issuing next week, and we'll make sure that we copy all the board members on it when it is issued.
Okay.
All right.
So
after you receive it, if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call.
Okay. But it will be specific enough, so give us some guidance. Terrific. All right, I can wait for that then. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Winnie, and I know that you've had discussions with REBNY about this. Is NYSAR interested in participating in the discussions as well?
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. All right.
Anytime.
Formal meeting or phone call?
I love informal. So
Okay. Okay. I'll give you a call.
Okay. All right.
Are we just?
Oh, that's big enough. We're covering that.
All right. Any other new business or items that the board members would like to discuss among themselves? None?
Oh, I'll just bring it up. I know I spoke to Mark about it before, and he answered me, but I just wanted to bring it to the board that some schools, if you become licensed as a new licensee, there's no record really that you actually took the course. It's kind of, and I think someone had brought it up in a previous meeting, it's kind of a self-check mark. Even though Mark mentioned that there was an audit done, you kind of hear kind of buzzes in the air that you really don't have to take the class if you're just checking a check mark. So I know you said that the system is going to be updated, the online system. My suggestion is that the schools have to manually go into the system and put who completed the requirements of the hours and the exam, and that way if a student comes to become licensed, it shows a red flag that the school hasn't certified them as yet. Because I do hear buzz that, you know, you can just go in the system and put a check mark and become licensed.
Right. I mean, I know that with the updates that we're doing to the system, for example, in another of our disciplines in appearance enhancement, we are requiring that you check the information, and there's basically a drop-down menu of all the licensed schools that we have on our system. And before the licensee is able to proceed, they would be able to check the school, and then a message is generated over to the school for them to corroborate the information that is being provided to the licensee. As we develop the new system, perhaps that's another way that we can do it as well, that we generate information, and you know, hopefully we have to reach out to all of our schools to see if their systems are going to be compatible in order for them to verify the information that is being provided by the licensee. So that's something as well that it's best to, as you did, you know, bring it over to Mark and Amy, and they'll take it into consideration when they're doing the new requirements.
Right. Thank you.
Presently, though, every school is required by the Department of State to submit within 15 days the names of anyone that completed their coursework. And so the state has the capability, as they're doing now, to do any kind of random audits because they have those receipts from each school. And they can then randomly audit people to verify if that is done.
Right. It may be an easier process also for the state if it just red flags. If it's a computer system that the school just has to log into, put the names and the socials and whatever, and then it's an automatic system that, you know, coincides with everything. So
it will definitely cut down on the time that our auditors are
no
spending.
need to audit and all that
this
stuff. It just works.
This may be a random question. Is there any way of confirming that the actual licensee is taking the online course?
Well, currently, what the system does is the applicant selects the school that they're going to, and then we're getting the lists from the schools of the people that have completed the course. And so what the unit does is they do confirm based on the list, and we compile a list of the people who applied online and select a certain school, and we do comparisons. If we see that there's somebody that has said they went to a school that's not on a list that the schools have provided to us, we'll audit that person and say, can you provide that evidence to us of that course? So there is ongoing checks being done. It's not like somebody can apply online and just check a box and say, I did it, and that's it. There is a validation done behind the scenes. Is it done for every single person? No, but there's a good percentage that we do look at. And when we've done the audits, which we did at the very beginning, and forward on, there has been very, very limited amount of people who have not taken the course. The only thing that we really see is where there's been a few people that are confused that they have to take the additional 30-hour course. But Mark has.
Additionally, we have a lot of schools with similar names, so people may select a school that sounds close to the name of the school they attended, and in those cases, we straighten it out through the audit. In those rare cases where we do find someone who has not completed the education as stated, they're afforded an opportunity to go to a hearing, and I believe in several cases the license has been revoked as a result of that fraudulent school selection. But again, a very small amount that we've found actually did not complete any education.
All right. Any other items? No? So now we will open it for public comment period. We don't have any members of the public here in New York City, and I see that we don't have any in Buffalo. Is there anyone in Albany?
No.
All right. So given that we went through all the items in the agenda, we will close the meeting and adjourn it. I'll take a motion, then reconfirm it when we have quorum. So is everyone in agreement to adjourn the meeting? There's no other issues to discuss?
No.
All right. Now I will turn it over to council for the required statement on the public hearing.
I call the public hearing to order. Is there anyone in Albany wishing to speak? No? Okay. Closed.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Great, thank you.